Zane had exactly $12 in his wallet, a wrinkled resume in his back pocket, and a screaming match happening 20 feet from the playground swing where his 8-year-old daughter, Penny, was kicking her feet like she could fly. His eyes locked on the commotion near the slide. A small boy with thick glasses was being shoved by a kid twice his size. Cameron didn't hesitate. He handed his coffee cup to a nearby mom without a word and jogged over. "Hey," Cameron's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. The bigger kid paused mid-shove. "What? Back off," Cameron said, stepping between them. The little boy behind him clung to his backpack, eyes wide with fear. The bully scoffed. "What are you gonna do, old man?" Cameron crouched to the boy's level and ignored the insult. "You okay, buddy?" The boy nodded, barely. "He took my Pokémon cards." Cameron stood and held out his hand. "Cards, now." The bully rolled his eyes but handed them over, muttering something about snitches. As he stalked off, Cameron turned to the boy. "You're safe now." He ruffled the boy's hair and smiled. "What's your name?" "Preston," the boy whispered. Cameron nodded. "All right, Preston. Let's go find your mom." He scanned the park, but didn't expect what he saw: heels clicking against pavement, sunglasses pushed into glossy chestnut hair, and a tailored navy blue coat that probably cost more than his rent. The woman walking toward them didn't just look expensive, she looked untouchable. But the second her eyes landed on Preston, they softened. "Mom." Preston ran into her arms. Cameron stood awkwardly nearby, suddenly aware of his faded jeans and worn boots. "I was so scared," Preston mumbled into her shoulder. "Hey," she said gently, pulling back to examine him. "What happened?" Cameron cleared his throat. "Sorry to interrupt. Your son was being bullied. I stepped in." Her eyes met his, deep hazel, intelligent, grateful. "You did?" "Yeah, he's okay, just shaken up." She turned fully to him now, and Cameron straightened without meaning to. "Thank you, seriously. She hesitated, then added, "Jessa Whitmore." Cameron nodded. "Cameron, Zane. And that over there is my daughter, Penny." Jessa glanced over and smiled warmly as Penny hopped off the swing and ran toward them. "Dad, what happened?" "Nothing, kiddo, just helping out." Jessa extended a hand to Penny. "Hi, Penny, I'm Preston's mom." Penny gave a shy wave. "Hi," Jessa turned back to Cameron. "You didn't have to get involved, but I'm glad you did." He shrugged. "No kid deserves to be pushed around." A silence fell between them, not awkward, just heavy with something unnamed. "Well," Jessa said, composing herself, "I'd love to thank you properly." "Can I buy you a coffee?" Cameron started to shake his head, instinctively brushing off the offer. But then Penny tugged his sleeve. "Dad, we love coffee," he chuckled. "All right, one coffee." They walked to the cafe a block away, Preston holding Jessa's hand, Penny skipping beside Cameron. Inside, Jessa ordered 2 cappuccinos, hot chocolates for the kids, and insisted on paying. Cameron kept stealing glances at her. Everything about her was polished: her voice, her posture, even the way she stirred her coffee. But she didn't act like she was better than anyone. She listened when Penny ranted about her science project and laughed when Preston admitted he'd hidden a sandwich in his backpack for 2 days. "So," Jessa said, looking at Cameron over her cup. "What do you do?" He hesitated. "I'm between things right now. I was working construction, but the company downsized." She tilted her head. "That's tough." "Yeah, been rough, but I'm figuring things out." She nodded but didn't ask more. Instead, she looked down, almost shy. "You're a good dad." That caught him off guard. "Thanks." "You too." Something shifted between them, then something warm and unspoken. They spent an hour in that cafe talking, nothing deep, just enough. When it was time to go, Jessa handed him a small business card. "If you ever need anything." Cameron took it. "Thanks, and hey," she added, "I hope this isn't the last time we bump into each other." He smiled. "Me too." They parted ways outside. Cameron watched her go, Preston's hand in hers, and shook his head. A woman like that, out of his league, out of his world. But Penny tugged his sleeve. "Dad. I like her." He looked down. "Yeah," she smiled at you. A real smile. Cameron chuckled. "Don't get your hopes up, kid." But as they walked home, her words stayed with him. Across the city, Jessa sat in the back of her town car, cardinals embroidered on her handbag, and tapped her phone screen, canceling her dinner with 2 CEOs. She couldn't stop thinking about the man with calloused hands and kind eyes who didn't hesitate to protect her son. And for the first time in a long time, Jessa Whitmore, the billionaire behind Whitmore Innovations, felt something she couldn't buy, control, or predict. She felt curious. And maybe, just maybe, she felt the very first flicker of falling. The knock came just as Cameron was rinsing the last of the dinner plates. Penny was in the living room, building a castle out of couch cushions and plastic dinosaurs. He dried his hands on a dish towel and walked to the door, half expecting it to be his landlord with another warning about the overdue rent. Instead, standing in the narrow hallway of the run-down apartment building, was Jessa Whitmore holding a paper bag that smelled unmistakably like Thai food. She wore jeans this time, dark and fitted, and a leather jacket that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. Her hair was tied back, not a strand out of place. "I hope this isn't weird," she said, "but Preston left his sketchbook in the cafe, and I thought." "I don't know, you might not have had dinner yet." Cameron blinked. "How did you even find your daughter mentioned your street. I asked around. It's not a long block." He stepped aside. "Come in." The apartment was small and clean, but the furniture had seen better decades. Jessa didn't comment. She handed him the bag and gave Penny a warm smile. "Hi again." Penny popped her head over the couch fortress. "Did you bring more hot chocolate?" "Not this time, just curry. Still good." Cameron set the food down on the chipped counter. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to." He glanced at her, unsure how to respond. Jessa sat on the edge of the armchair, her posture relaxed but still elegant in a way that made the room feel smaller. Penny offered her a plastic dinosaur, and she accepted it without hesitation. Balancing it on her knee, Cameron opened one of the containers, the scent of lemongrass and spice filling the room. "You bring dinner to every guy who helps your kid, only the ones who actually make an effort to return the sketchbook," she said lightly. "Besides, Preston's been talking about you since yesterday. He never connects with people that fast." "I didn't do much. Just stepped in. That's more than most people would have done." He sat across from her, picking at the food. "You always this generous with strangers," she studied him. "I don't think of you as a stranger." Penny looked between them, then returned to her fortress, humming. Cameron cleared his throat. "So, what do you do?" Jessa's gaze dropped for a moment, then lifted with a small smile. "I run a company." "What kind?" "Tech, design, a little of everything," he nodded slowly. "That sounds intense." "It is. You like it?" "I used to," she admitted. "Lately, I'm not sure." There was a beat of silence. "You ever think about quitting?" he asked. She looked surprised. "More than I probably should." Cameron leaned back. "Then why don't you?" Jessa hesitated. "Because quitting means letting go of something I built from the ground up. And I'm not sure who I'd be without it," he nodded. "Yeah, I get that." She tilted her head. "What would you do if money wasn't a problem?" Cameron looked toward the window where the city lights flickered through cracked blinds. "I'd build something with my hands, fix up old houses maybe. Something real, something that doesn't vanish when the market crashes." Her eyes flicked to his calloused knuckles, and she said nothing for a moment. He glanced at her. "What about you, if I could start over?" she said slowly. "I think I'd open a bookstore, one with a little cafe, big windows. Quiet mornings." Cameron grinned. "You don't strike me as the quiet type. You don't strike me as the dreamer type." Shows how much we know. They both laughed, and it startled him how easy it felt. Penny leaned over the back of the couch. "Can she come again tomorrow?" Cameron raised an eyebrow. "That's up to her." Jessa stood, brushing invisible lint from her jeans. "I'll check my schedule." "I bet it's full of very important bookstore meetings," he said. She smiled. "Something like that." Outside, the air had cooled. Cameron walked her to the door, neither of them rushing. "Thanks again," he said, holding the door open. "I should be thanking you. Pretty sure you just bought me dinner." She turned to face him. "You're different. Is that a good thing?" "It's rare." They stood there, a few inches apart, the hallway quiet except for the hum of a distant elevator. Then her phone rang muffled in her bag and she stepped back. "I should go." "Right." She hesitated. "Can I see you again?" Cameron blinked. "You're asking me." "I don't like waiting around for things I want." He stared at her, then nodded. "Yeah, you can." She turned to leave, then paused at the top of the stairs. "I wasn't kidding about that bookstore. Let me know when it opens." Back inside, Penny was asleep among the cushions. Cameron pulled a blanket over her and sat on the edge of the couch, looking at the now empty food containers. He wasn't stupid. He knew there was something different about Jessa. Something just beyond the surface. But whatever it was, it didn't feel fake. It didn't feel like a game. And for the first time in years, he felt something more than survival. He felt possibility. The first thing Cameron noticed when he stepped into the Whitmore building was the silence. Not the kind you found in small apartments after bedtime, but the sterile, expensive kind that came with glass walls and polished marble floors. His boots echoed sharply as he crossed the lobby, holding Penny's hand in one of his and a folder of paperwork in the other. "Dad, are you sure this is the right place?" Penny whispered, eyes wide as she looked up at the massive chandelier above them. "Yeah," he said, adjusting his grip on the folder. She said the 6th floor. Jessa had called it a favor, said she needed help with a renovation project and thought of him. What she didn't say, but he knew, was that she'd found a way to help him without making it feel like charity. The elevator doors opened to a view that didn't belong inside an office. A sprawling rooftop terrace stretched out before them, covered in planters and half-finished garden beds. Jessa stood at the far end, rolled blueprints under one arm, sleeves pushed up to her elbows and a pencil tucked behind her ear. When she spotted them, she waved. "You made it." Penny ran ahead. "Is this your roof?" "Technically, it's the company's," Jessa said, crouching to meet her eye level. "But I'm the only one who ever comes up here." Cameron stepped forward. "So what exactly are you planning to do with it?" "I want to turn it into something useful, a space for the employees. Garden, seating, maybe a greenhouse. It's yours if you want the job." He raised an eyebrow. "You're trusting me with this much real estate. You're the only one I trust to make it feel like something real." He looked around, taking in the raw potential. "It'll take weeks." "I've got time. No budget talk," he asked. Jessa smiled. "Just write down what you need. I'll handle the rest." As Penny wandered off to explore the garden beds, Cameron lowered his voice. "You're not doing this just to help me. I'm doing this because I want to," she said, "and because I think you're good at it." He studied her. "You're not like anyone I've ever met." "I'll take that as a compliment." They spent the next 2 hours marking off areas, measuring lengths, and discussing materials. Jessa took notes, asked questions, and listened in a way that didn't feel performative. Cameron forgot, more than once, that he was standing on the rooftop of a billion-dollar company. When Penny grew tired and curled up on one of the lounge chairs, Cameron covered her with his jacket and turned back to Jessa, who was sketching something quickly on the blueprint paper. "You really don't care what the board thinks?" he asked. "About this?" "No, they'll see what it becomes." "And what about the people who think a CEO shouldn't be up here gardening with a guy like me?" She capped her pen. "Those people don't know what they're talking about." He leaned against the railing, watching the city stretch out below them. "You ever think about how fast everything changes? One minute, I'm struggling to keep food on the table. Next, I'm standing on a rooftop with you, planning something that actually feels worth doing." Jessa joined him at the edge. "That's the thing about change, it doesn't ask permission." He glanced at her. Her face was turned to the wind, thoughtful but steady. "You always this fearless?" "No," she said. "I just don't let people see the cracks." "Why not?" "Because if they see them, they'll try to break them wider." Cameron was quiet for a long moment. "You ever let anyone see the real you?" She looked at him then, really looked. "I don't know. Maybe you should." Jessa turned back to the skyline, but her expression had changed. There was something softer in it now, something less guarded. "I've been thinking about taking Preston to the coast," she said. "A few days away. It's been a long year. You want to get out of the city. Just breathe. Let him see the ocean." Cameron nodded slowly. "Sounds like a good trip. I'd like you to come." He blinked. "Me and Penny, of course." He ran a hand through his hair. "That's a lot. I know it's sudden. But I think it would be good, for all of us." He didn't answer right away. His mind ran through logistics, responsibilities, reasons to say no, but when he looked at her again, he saw none of the usual pressure, just an open offer. "I'll have to figure some things out," he said. "Let me know." "We're leaving Friday." He looked down at Penny, now fast asleep in the chair, her hair falling across her cheek. For once, she looked peaceful, safe. He turned back to Jessa. "Okay, we'll come." Her smile was quiet but radiant. "Good." They didn't say much after that. They didn't need to. As he carried Penny back down through the building and into the late afternoon sun, Cameron felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not just hope. but the beginning of a life he hadn't dared imagine. The house sat at the edge of a bluff, just past a winding coastal road where the cliffs met the sea. It wasn't flashy whitewashed wood, wraparound porch, tall windows that opened to the sound of crashing waves, but it felt like air after drowning. And it was Jessa's. Cameron stepped out of the SUV first, lifting Penny gently from the backseat. She stirred against his chest and blinked in the sunlight, then smiled when she saw the ocean. Preston bounded out next, barefoot before anyone could stop him, already racing toward the dune path behind the house. "You brought us to the edge of the world," Cameron said, steadying Penny as she climbed down. "I thought a little distance might be good," Jessa replied, setting down a cooler she'd packed herself. "There's no cell service unless you hike up the hill. The caretaker lives across the road." "We're on our own out here," he gave a slow nod. "You planned this. I needed space to think. You needed space to build. Preston needed space to be a kid, and Penny, she needed to see that the world is big and beautiful and safe." She led them inside. The floors creaked in a way that made the place feel lived in. Mismatched armchairs faced a fireplace stacked with driftwood. There were paintings on the walls, landscapes, mostly, and a bookshelf filled with weathered hardcovers. No screens. No ticking clocks. Jessa handed Cameron a ring of keys. "There's a workshop behind the house. Tools, materials, do what you want with it." He took them without a word. The days passed like waves, constant, but never quite the same. Cameron spent the mornings in the shed, fixing a broken bench, sanding down a table warped with seawater, teaching Penny to hold a hand plane with steady pressure. She was quick to learn. Preston trailed after them, asking questions, trying things for himself, always watching Cameron with quiet admiration. At night, they cooked together. Nothing fancy, grilled vegetables, fresh bread from the roadside bakery, whatever fish the neighbor dropped off in a cooler. Jessa didn't hover. She chopped, stirred, and joined in the laughter without trying to lead it. She was different here. Her hair tangled easily in the wind, and she let it. She walked barefoot through the grass in the mornings, wrapped in a sweater, and didn't apologize when she burned toast. One evening, the four of them sat on the back porch, the sun sinking into the horizon like it was folding itself into the sea. Preston and Penny sat cross-legged with a deck of cards between them, arguing over the rules of a game neither of them fully understood. Cameron leaned back, arms behind his head, his eyes on the tide. Jessa handed him a glass of wine and sat beside him. He glanced at her. "You ever think about not going back?" She didn't answer right away. "Sometimes. Then I remember how many people rely on me. You could still be here," he said. "Different kind of leader. I wouldn't know how. You're learning." She looked at him then, not like she had in the city, not with curiosity or calculation, but with something rawer. "You make it look easy." "It's not," Cameron said, "but it's real." She took a breath. "I haven't been real with anyone in a long time." "Then start now." Jessa reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to him without explanation. Cameron unfolded it. It was an article, an old one. A headline about a hostile takeover, a lawsuit, a scandal that had nearly ruined her company years ago. She hadn't just built Whitmore Innovations, she'd fought for it, bled for it. "I've been carrying that around for years," she said, "to remind myself what I survived." He folded it carefully. "You don't need it anymore," she nodded slowly. "Maybe not." The wind picked up and she leaned into his shoulder without asking. He didn't move away. Later that night, after the kids had fallen asleep on the couch under a patchwork blanket they'd found in the closet, Cameron stood in the kitchen rinsing mugs. Jessa walked in barefoot, her hair damp from a quick shower, wearing a faded sweatshirt she must have found in a drawer. "I was thinking," she said, leaning against the counter, "about what you said before, about not going back." "Yeah, what if I didn't? What if I handed off the company, took a real step back?" He set down the mug. "You sure?" "No, but that rooftop garden you're building. It made me realize I don't want to just build things that make money. I want to build things that last." He dried his hands and moved toward her. "Then start with this." "With what?" He reached for her hand. "With us?" She smiled, not the practiced kind, the real one. "Are you saying this is a thing?" "I'm saying it could be, if you want it." Her voice was low. "I do." He kissed her then. Slow, certain, like neither of them had anywhere else to be. Weeks later, back in the city, Cameron returned to the rooftop garden to find it transformed. Vines had begun climbing the trellises, the seating was finished, and soft lights strung across the pergola glowed as dusk settled. At the far end, a small plaque had been mounted to the brick wall. In honor of second chances, Jessa stood beside it, dressed in jeans and a linen blouse, holding Preston's hand. Penny ran past them, shouting something about butterflies. Cameron wrapped an arm around her waist. "You really handing it over?" "I already did." "I'm still involved, but I'm not chained to it anymore." He looked around. "So what now?" She glanced at him, her expression steady. "Now we build a life together," and they did. Not in a penthouse or a glass tower, but in a house near the coast with crooked floors and a shop out back where wood shavings curled under Cameron's boots. Where laughter echoed in the kitchen, and the sound of the ocean was a constant reminder that everything broken could be made whole again. Together, they built something no company could ever buy: a home. A family, a love that didn't just survive, it thrived. The scent of lavender and fresh paint drifted through the open windows of the little coastal house as Cameron tightened the final screw into the bookshelf he'd built for the living room. The wood was locally sourced, the finish soft and smooth beneath his fingertips. Penny sat cross-legged nearby, sorting through a box of old books they'd found at the market that morning, humming off key as she read the titles aloud. "Dad, this one's about a girl who talks to whales," she said, holding up a faded paperback. "Can I keep it in my room?" "It's your shelf too, kiddo," Cameron replied, standing and stretching his arms behind his back. "Anything in this house is yours." Before Penny could respond, Jessa's voice called from the front door. "Cameron, you've got a visitor." He stepped into the hallway, wiping his hands on a rag, only to find Preston standing beside Jessa, holding a canvas bag and looking nervous but determined. "I made something," Preston said, holding up the bag. "For the garden." Jessa stepped aside as Cameron crouched down. "Let's see." Preston pulled out a wooden sign, uneven but carefully painted, with the words "Zane's Garden" carved across the front in bright blue letters. A line of seashells bordered the bottom, glued on with such precision it made Cameron's chest tighten. "You made this," Preston nodded. "I used the tools in the shed. Jessa helped me with the carving." Cameron looked up at her, his voice low. "He did this himself." "I just showed him where the chisels were," she said softly. Cameron turned back to Preston. "This is going right at the front of the path." Preston's shoulders straightened with pride. Later that afternoon, the three of them walked down to the garden together, Penny skipping ahead with a bundle of wildflowers. Cameron hammered the sign into the earth beside the gate Preston had helped him rebuild, and the boy stood back, examining it like it was the final touch on something that mattered. "You're good at this," Cameron told him. Preston ducked his head. "I like building stuff. Anytime you want to help, that shed's always open." Jessa watched them from the porch, arms folded loosely, eyes never leaving the scene. When Cameron finally turned to her, she pushed off the railing and walked down the path. "There's something else," she said quietly, her fingers brushing his as they stood under the shade of the lemon tree they'd planted together weeks ago. "I'm listening. I've been offered a position on a nonprofit board. They build community spaces in underserved towns. No suits, no shareholders. Just real work." He studied her face. "You'd stay here, I already decided. I want to build things that matter, not just to the world, to us." Cameron's voice dropped. "You're not going to miss the skyline, not once," she said. "Besides, I've got Cliff's now." He reached for her hand fully then, lacing their fingers. "You sure you're ready for this? The quiet, the mess, the normal?" "I'm ready for you." The kiss that followed wasn't hurried. It was full and sure, the kind that came after every wall had finally fallen away. That evening, they ate dinner outside, the four of them around the table Cameron had built, candles flickering in mason jars, the sound of crickets rising around them. Penny had braided wildflowers into her hair, and Preston told a story about a crab he'd found near the rocks that refused to be caught. Jessa laughed without restraint, leaning into Cameron's shoulder as he passed her another slice of the lemon cake they'd baked together. As the stars filled the sky and the kids began to droop with sleep, Jessa looked at Cameron and said, This is what I was missing. All those years, all those meetings. It wasn't about what I was building, it was about who I didn't have to share it with. You've got us now, he said. All of us. She leaned into him as Penny curled up in her lap, half asleep, and Preston tucked himself beneath the throw blanket at her feet. The world had grown quiet, but inside that silence was everything they needed. Months passed. The garden flourished, drawing in neighbors and travelers alike. Cameron taught woodworking classes in the shed, never charging more than what someone could give. Jessa joined the nonprofit board, using her skills to raise funding for new parks and gathering spaces across the region. She kept her office in the corner of the house, but more often than not, she worked from the picnic table outside, barefoot and sun-kissed. Penny thrived at the local school, her science projects now supported by her own tiny greenhouse out back. Preston, once quiet and hesitant, began sketching designs for a treehouse he wanted Cameron to help him build. He ran faster now, stood taller. One rainy afternoon, the four of them sat on the floor of the living room, playing cards while the fire crackled behind them. Penny wrinkled her nose as she lost again, and Jessa leaned her head against Cameron's shoulder. "Do you ever miss the city?" she asked. "No," he said, "but I'd miss this." She turned to him. "You still think you're the lucky one." "I know I am." Jessa smiled, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a ring, simple gold, no diamonds, no flash, just real. She held it out to him, her voice low. "I don't need a ceremony, I don't need a dress, I just want you, forever. If you'll have me." Cameron stared at the ring, then at her, then back again, and for the first time in his life, he didn't hesitate. He slid it onto his finger and kissed her hand. "You've had me since the playground." The rain tapped gently on the windows as they held each other, the kids laughing beside them, cards spilling across the floor, the smell of firewood and fresh baked bread filling the room. And so they stayed together, whole and finally home.